Need to know, do you think we can help your mom?
Miss, she said, Miss,
Yes.
I took pictures and I told my friends about it. Was that bad?
I think essentially you're going to ruin another life by doing that.
One night, 13-year-old Derek Rosa decided he would get up, grab a kitchen knife, and end his mother's life. Then he sent this picture to a friend. He seemed proud of what he did, but was he aware of the gravity of the crime? And what on earth made him do it? The shocking news of his arrest and crime opened up a long discussion about teenage killers and the appropriate punishments for them. No two cases are the same, and in Derek's case, we have more than a few questions left unanswered. This is the full story of Derek Rosa and all the updates on the still fresh case. 39-year-old Irina Garcia had just given birth to a daughter. Everyone was happy for her. She was already a devoted mom, and now she had a new soul to take care of. But just 2 weeks after having her daughter on October 12th, 2023, the emergency services in Miami, Florida were called to her house. Her 13-year-old son, Derek Rosa, had made the call. He had just unalived his mother, he said, and he wanted to let the authorities know. The dispatcher had a million questions, but the most pressing one was, could his mother be saved?
I need to know if your mom is breathing.
She said, Miss,
Okay, and what did you do then?
blood all over the floor.
I need to know, do you think we can help your mom?
Miss, she said,
With a voice half calm, half in distress, Derek told the dispatcher that he had used a knife to take his mother's life. He was also considering taking his stepfather's gun and using it on himself.
I was going to shoot myself, but I didn't want to.
Where is the gun right now?
It's in the living room. I loaded it. I pulled back the slide, but I did not.
He was having double thoughts. He thought he'd better let law enforcement know what had happened before he did all that. Then he had another question for the dispatcher.
Miss,
Yes.
I took pictures and I told my friends about it. Was that bad?
You told who about it?
My friends.
Who did you send us pictures to?
My friend. I don't know his real name because he is an online basketball player with a lot.
Derek was on the phone with the dispatcher for 18 minutes, during which he confessed to sharing these unspeakable pictures with his online friend. This is one of the pictures. Honestly, how sick is this? Luckily, when the officers arrived at his address, he surrendered peacefully and confessed to his crime. Authorities also quickly found the weapon, a kitchen knife with a pink handle. But the officers were met with a scarring sight. Irina was found in her bed, lying in a red pool. A couple of feet away was her 14-day-old daughter in a crib. These were Irina and her baby daughter hours before Irina lost her life, and this was happening a few seconds before. In a heartbreaking twist, Irina had installed a camera in her room to keep an eye on her baby all the time. She never imagined the camera would record her tragic ending. In some cases, the investigators work hard to catch a culprit or prove that they're guilty. This was not one of those cases. Derek Rosa had confessed, his DNA was all over the gruesome scene, and there was even video evidence of this horrific moment. But the million-dollar question was yet unanswered. Why had Derek taken his mother's life? And how could a 13-year-old do such a heinous thing, let alone send pictures of it to his friends? Derek's stepfather was out of town that day, as he worked as a truck driver. When he returned, his whole life had been turned upside down. He was a single dad to a baby who will have no recollection of her mother. And his stepson, whom he loved and treated as his own son, had taken away the person he loved most. He was not only shocked at what had happened, but in disbelief that Derek could have done this. When the detective spoke to him and the extended family, no one saw Derek as a troubled teen. He was an honors student, had no history of mental health, and was kind and polite to his friends and family. Eddie Rodriguez, the Hialeah police spokesman, said, "This is heartbreaking. I never would have imagined something like this, a 13-year-old child taking his mother's life. It's a very sad story." When he was asked about the motive, he confessed that law enforcement was still trying to figure that one out. "We don't know. That's something we're still trying to figure out." He did not say why he did this. All he did was call 911 and advise what he did. Irina's friend, Andina, set up a GoFundMe page for Irina's funeral. She wrote about her friend. I was lucky enough to know Irina for a year since moving to our apartment. She was a person that I can only describe as beautiful both inside and out. She was always so warm and kind. From all accounts, Irina was just as warm and kind to her son, Derek. It's unclear when his biological dad stepped out of the picture or when Irina remarried Derek's stepfather. It's also unclear what relationship Derek had with his stepfather and if he still maintained contact with his biological father. Whichever the case, his decision to take his mother's life seemed sudden, senseless, and very difficult to explain. Several forensic experts weighed in on their thoughts on the matter. Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Bobber emphasized how childlike Derek actually is.
Really tragic, as you said, but he sounded like a child on the 911 call because he is a child, and his brain doesn't have the same hardware as an adult. If you break these for the brain up into two systems, we have what's called social emotional control, which actually develops much quicker than what we call cognitive control. So if you think of social emotional control as the gas, think of cognitive control as the brakes. So in a child that age, you have the gas without the brakes. And this means that you have a child's brain that's unable to weigh the future consequences of its actions.
In other words, teens are known to be much more impulsive than adults because their brain simply isn't fully developed yet, and they don't often think of the consequences of their actions. Teens also tend to be more self-centered, thinking of their needs and never considering those of the people around them.
Unable to exercise restraint, unable to weigh the options, that's very emotionally dysregulated, and it's very difficult for them to control their impulses in the same way that an adult does.
Okay, this answers the how more than the why. Both questions are relevant when deciding what the appropriate punishment for Derek would be. When convicting a 13-year-old, it's not that simple. Even when a killer is 17, if they're not 18 yet, they can be tried as a juvenile. This means that they can be released when they turn 21. But 13 is a shockingly young age. When a child this young commits such a vile crime, experts want to look at other details. What was their family life like? Were they bullied? Did they suffer from any mental illness, perhaps unaddressed by the adults in their lives? There are so many questions that have to be answered before even deciding if a child will be tried as a child or as an adult. And then the questions will be debated some more before the jury reaches a verdict.
Well, the Supreme Court looked at this issue in Roper v. Simmons. They looked at the culpability of children compared to adults, and they don't think that it should be the same. So I do think that there has to be some consequences here, but I don't think you could look at him through the same lens that you would look at an adult who committed this crime.
What about the horrific pictures he sent to his friend? Doesn't this show that he was perfectly aware of what he had done, if not even proud of it?
Actually, some people would say that it's the opposite, right? Because it's not like he's trying to conceal the crime. He's trying to show it to his friends. So I think there's an awareness that maybe he did something wrong, but maybe he did something wrong in the sense that he spilled something on the carpet and not that he took someone's life. I think he doesn't realize the finality of that.
Simply put, Derek might not realize the gravity of the situation, or if he did by now, it's too late. Still, it's easy to imagine that there must have been some unaddressed mental issues if Derek found it that inconsequential to unalive his own mother, right? According to Dr. Daniel Bobber, motives can be many, and they don't have to pertain to mental health necessarily.
It could be something as simple as he was told no, or he was denied access to something. That's what, is so tragic about it. And again, I think what he did was obviously disproportionate to whatever happened before we heard this 911 call. But I'm sure whatever it's going to be something that on the surface seems rather silly, but in his mind, in his view of the world, it was something that pushed him over the edge.
Dr. Bobber is talking from experience. Sadly, there are many teens who respond disproportionately to their parents limiting their freedom. Teenage years are naturally a back and forth negotiation between parents and child. As the child grows, they want more independence, but the parents resist several of their attempts at acting as an adult. Usually, the adults are well-intended. They want to keep their child safe from harm or bad influence groups, and the child gets frustrated that their parents don't trust them. In some cases, though, the parents are stricter than usual. On the one hand, teenagers can become even more rebellious, pushing boundaries and forcing their parents to admit that they can do whatever they want. On the other hand, if they're oppressed enough, teenagers can develop intense resentment or even hatred toward their parents, and this can result in unspeakable tragedies. However, not all teens who kill are reacting to extreme environments.
I looked at him, and my mother, there was blood running out the side of her head. I stood there and I laughed.
When 16-year-old Sean Sellers decided to unalive his parents, he was frustrated over his mother trying to separate him from a girlfriend she considered a bad influence. But Sean had been obsessed with Satan and the occult for years. During his parents' frequent absences from the house, he found solace in a strange book of symbols and rituals. And when the cult movie The Omen came out, Sean identified with the protagonist, a little, apparently powerless boy who could harness the power of Satan and destroy his family. Sean began doing rituals, and soon enough, he started to believe that an actual demon would enter his body, giving him the power to do whatever he liked.
He would often call upon a demon to actually enter his body.
It was a combination of unfortunate factors that led Sean to make a fateful decision and take 2 lives in one night.
I lifted the gun up and I put it close to my father's head. And I pulled the trigger.
This was happening in 1986, and there was much less leniency towards teens at that time. In fact, Sean was treated just like an adult, and when he confessed to a third murder, one he'd committed back in 1985, he was seen as an evil monster who had to die. He was sentenced to death and executed in 1999. From prison, he gave interviews and expressed his remorse and shock at how the occult controlled his life.
I'm so sorry for what I did. I don't regret it because I got caught. I don't regret it because I'm on death row. I regret it because of what I did.
But it was too late to change his fate. Today, there are very different discussions about what should happen to teen killers, especially at an age as young as Derek.
Do you think this is somebody that could receive treatment, be rehabilitated in some way? Because again, a heinous crime like this at 13 years old, what do you think?
I do think there is rehabilitative potential here, and I think putting him in the adult prison system, where there's very little opportunity to better himself, to reform himself, is not the way to go here. I think essentially you're going to ruin another life by doing that.
Despite all the talk of Derek's age, he was moved from a juvenile detention center to the Metro West Detention Center, an adult prison. After pleading not guilty, it was decided that he would stand trial as an adult.
Today's hearing was called after defense attorneys for the 13-year-old suspect alleged that his rights were being violated by housing him in the juvenile wing of an adult detention center while he awaits trial. They're now asking the judge in this case to move him to a juvenile facility. While ultimately nothing was decided today, the judge in this case did agree to hold another hearing on this matter later this week.
Derek Rosa looked calm and composed before the judge. One might even argue that he didn't really understand all that was going on around him. His defense team said one thing, the prosecution said another, and the judge said, okay, we'll discuss things again in a few days. Surely, though, he understood what he had done when the prosecution showed the judge pictures of the bloody knife he left on the table after taking his mother's life. His family stood there in tears, Derek's biological dad included, but Derek didn't shed a tear. Psychiatrists and criminologists have yet to uncover why an honors student who left good first impressions everywhere he went could so suddenly and callously take his mother's life. As the wheels of justice move slowly, it will probably be a long time before a verdict is reached. It will be interesting to learn why Derek made such a terrible decision and what was the spark that triggered it. Hey, thanks a bunch for watching. What are your thoughts on this case? What sentence do you think Derek should receive? Let me know in a comment, and before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time.